Good morning, Doxa Deo Artis. My name is Henny Horn and it's a privilege for me to share my story with you this morning. It all started back in 2018 when I was first year at the University of Northwest. When I found myself in a relationship for 2 years where everything was just good. Life couldn't be better for 2 years and we grew on each other and everything was sorted for the future. When one morning suddenly I realized the relationship was over. The first one to blame was God. I just blamed God for everything. How can He put someone on my path for 2 years and then just suddenly take them away? That's when my journey with the Lord started to divide. 6 months after that, I woke up one morning with a message saying my father passed. Just to call back and find out if my mother is okay, to get the news that my mother also passed. By that time of my life, there was no more reason for me to believe. So I started drinking for about 4 months, from morning till evening, day in and day out. One morning I woke up and I decided to turn back to normal, doing my daily tasks, focusing on my studies, and just enjoying the life again. But still my relationship with God was not recovered. Soon after that, I got in a car accident where I was to blame for the death of someone else. I was locked up in jail for 14 hours. For that 14 hours, it was only me and God. So after 14 hours of arguing with God, getting into fights, and just blaming Him for everything that happened to my life, the gates opened and I was released free. That Monday, I was found unguilty with no charges. This is just my story to show you guys that even though life is not as you plan it, that God will always come through. I'm sharing my story today because this shows me that God will always have your back. Earlier this year, me and my wife found out that she can't get pregnant. All of the doctors and specialists told us that there's no chance for us getting pregnant. Today, my wife is 17 weeks pregnant. It's a privilege for me to know God and to return back to Him. And I hope that my story touches you to start believing again.
In the middle, finding God when life gets hard. When everything is uncertain around our lives, it becomes difficult to manage through life. Have you ever noticed how life can change in a moment? A phone call that you receive, a doctor's report, a financial setback. Yes, SARS season is open. A relationship that suddenly falls apart. A job loss, a prayer that you've been praying maybe for many years and it still seems like this prayer is unanswered. One moment, everything feels secure, and the next, we're standing in the middle of uncertainty. You see, here's the truth. Most of us do not struggle when life is predictable. We struggle when we don't know what comes next. What if things don't work out? What if I lose what I've built? What if God does not come through? Does that sound like things that we've thought before? You see, the truth is, uncertainty has a way of exposing what we've been trusting. I want to say that again. Uncertainty has a way of exposing what we've been trusting. And today, as we venture through the book of Corinthians, Paul reminds us that although everything around us may change, here's the truth: God never changes. God is unchanging. And he starts by writing in 2 Corinthians 4 verse 16 to 18, and I want to dissect it a bit. He says, "Therefore, we do not lose heart. So he's speaking to the constituents, to the people he's writing to. He tells them, we do not lose heart. Why? Though outwardly we are wasting away. Now let me just quickly say, that's strong terminology. Because he doesn't say we're feeling bad. He's saying we're wasting away. It means like we're at the end of our ropes. We're busy dying. It's almost a picture that you haven't eaten and you are literally wasting away. He's talking about the outward focus. So yes, we live in a harsh reality. We live in a broken world. We live with a lot of things happening around us, and we're going through crises. We're in the middle of the storm. It might be a financial storm, it might be a relational storm. Whatever the storm is, it might be job related. We're going through the storm. So outwardly, the picture doesn't look like it should look and the way I want it. So now he says, although things aren't great outwardly, he says, yet inwardly, we are being renewed day by day. What is he speaking about? Is God lifting us up every day and giving us something so that this is better? He's talking about a focus. He's talking about a perception. You see, when you and I focus on what's happening around us, we stop seeing God before us. All we can see is this crisis. All we can see is I'm in the middle of the storm and I do not have the opportunity to see God and allow God to renew my mind, because everything that is happening in the world is just passing by. It's fleeting, but the unchanging is who God is and what God has done and what God is busy doing for me. For our light and momentarily troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. We live so in this world, and we do so much in this world, but everything on this world is not of value to God. I want to say that again. We have a lot of value to the things we do on earth. And by that I'm not saying that God uses what we do, not use what we do on earth. Of course He uses it. But that's not the focus. The focus is to see God. It's a relational focus. I am in Him. And that is the unchanging truth, that He is a good Father. Because how do I say He's a good Father in the midst of the storm? Because He's with me in the storm. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. You see, here's the truth this morning, church. Even when circumstances shift, God remains enough. Why? Because God is our portion. Psalm 16 verse 5 says, Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. Can we say this morning that God is enough? Can we say that? Or do we need a big bank account? Is God enough? Or do I need 3 cars? Is God enough? Or do I want 4 houses? You see, because the reality is we struggle with how this festers through our lives. We say God is enough, but when we're in the crisis, God does not become the focus. The things around us become the focus. David doesn't write here by saying, I am the king and my wealth is my portion. I am the king and my career is my portion. I have great kids and a beautiful wife or husband, so my family becomes my portion. No, he says, Lord, you alone are my portion. So once again, everything he has, everything that has been entrusted to him, does not become the driving force of his life. God becomes the driving force. God. David says, my security is not found in what I own. My security is found in who owns me. In who owns me. And that is difficult for us because we naturally build our confidence around things that can disappear in a moment. Let me quickly say to you, in a moment, SARS, and it's SARS season again, can just quickly put in your bank account and freeze everything. Shake and bake. Or you've got a lot of things in stock and the stock crashes. Things monetary can change in a moment. Health can change now. People that you love, that's in your life, that are your friends, that you would ride and die with, stabs you in the back and suddenly those relationships are gone. People can disappoint you. Careers can end. Your job is reconstructing and repurposing people. And in a very late age, you need to find a new career. Things happen. Dreams get shattered. Dreams might shift. But the truth remains. God is unchanging. Psalm 46, and we've written so many songs about this. God is our refuge and God is our strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Do we believe that? Then why, when things get tough, we can go get a second mortgage? When things get tough, we refinance. When things get tough, we sometimes stop in the necessities and the things that we should do rather than not. It's an interesting statistic. My mom is in insurance. She's been in insurance her whole life. She had her own business for many, many years, well, as long as I can remember. And it's interesting. The first two things, statistically proven, when people experience financial hardship, they cancel insurance and they stop tithing. And if you think about in practical life, insurance is important. And if you think of a spiritual habit, tithing is crucial. Because it's not about the money, it's about the expression of the heart. By saying, God is my refuge and God is my strength. He's the one that helps me. Notice, God doesn't say He will prevent the trouble. But He wants you to focus on the right things in the trouble, because He says He's ever present in trouble. Many of us ask God to remove uncertainty. But God doesn't necessarily remove the uncertainty. He says, listen, I am the best loan you can ever make. I'm available. I am the best solution you might ever need. I am available. And He's made Himself available. We just need to react because He has already offered and given Himself. His presence is greater than any predictable circumstance. When God becomes our portion, losing other things no longer means you've lost everything. And when I see this, I always get this picture. I told you about that young man a while back. But I was just reminded about that, and I want to share the story again. And if you've heard it, sorry. I just want to share it with those that haven't heard it. But this young man, a few years ago, comes to the church, and he becomes part of our processes. And young man, still building his life, doesn't have a car, doesn't have a bicycle, walks where he wants. And suddenly he comes to the church with a step. You know, that spring in his step. And he's smelling differently. The perfume follows him, the eau de cologne follows him from the gate all over the church. So I ask him, what's her name? And he tells me this girl's name. And I said to her, are you excited? Are you visiting her? Yes. I said, where does she stay? So she stays on the Pretoria North road, about 15 k's out of Harties. I said, but how do you get there? He says, no, I run. I said, excuse me? He says, no, I run. I said, and how do you get back? He says, I run back. I said, how many times a week do you see her? Every day. Don't we do crazy things for love? Hello? Hello? I said to him, but why don't you Uber? He says, I'd rather spend the money on her. Who wants a son-in-law like that? Come on. He is focused on what is crucial for him. He doesn't care that he has to run 30 k's a day. Come hail, rain or snow, he's on his way to his beloved. Because the purpose to get there, the sweat, the hardship, means nothing because he's receiving everything from her. Just holding her hand and a kiss on the lips makes 30k seem like nothing. We hold on to where we are because we can't see further than where we are. This 30k's became an opportunity. While he was running to her, he was thinking of the poems he's going to recite to her. Thouest are the greatest. Thy lips are like the cherry blossoms. Because he's thinking of the one he loves. He doesn't endure the hardship. Now this that I've placed here is going to get you some more context in a little while. But I want you to think just for a moment, when you're uncertain, when we become uncertain, to what do we run to? What becomes our source for changing our uncertainty? Sometimes when we're uncertain about finances, we've got 1 or 2 or 3 schemes. When we're uncertain about family members, we try to confront the situation. Some of us has a default. What is that? What are we trying to control? Why do we worry? We're going to talk about that a bit more later. I want you to understand this morning, God holds our future. Psalm 16, I want to remind you, said, you make my lot secure. Now let me quickly ask you the following question. When crises hit, how do we feel secure in a crisis? I mean, if I had the capacity to put you in a lion's den, would you feel secure between hungry lions? Let's be honest. No. If I could put you in a fiery pit with flames, would you feel secure? But once again, the scripture confronts a truth in our lives that our circumstances does not define our security, church. Our security is defined that we are in Him and He is in us, and He changes our perception about how life and what life is about. Life is fleeting. Life is not about just acquiring accolades on earth, but it is being purposefully living a life that God wants for us. David understood something powerful. Although he did not know his future, he knew the one that did. Our greatest fears usually live in tomorrow. Our fears live in tomorrow. And I want to give you a practical example. For the last few years, my wife has had the privilege to be auto-assessed at SARS every year. And for some reason in the last few years it's changed. We always got a refund on her. Now I always get a surprise. Hello, hello, hello. So season is opening now. From tomorrow you can do your assessment as well. But the auto-assessment started in July. So I phoned my bookkeeper. I say to him, are they going to auto-assess my wife? He doesn't know. I said, please, they mustn't auto-assess her. Because if I receive mine, I can mitigate the whole story. So I first want to do mine before they do hers. Please. So now what do I do? Every day I pray, Lord, please don't let them auto-assess. It's not happened yet, but now I'm praying. 2 days later, he phones me. Guess what? Your wife has been auto-assessed. Now things are happening all over in my mind and everything. But I worried about that for about 4 to 6 weeks, hoping it was not going to become a reality for it to become a reality. So my worst fears, I don't want to say projected it, but here's the thing. If I did not contemplate it for 4 weeks, I would have felt much better in those 4 weeks. The Bible says, why will I worry about what I eat tomorrow if God is faithful today? Why would I worry about tomorrow if God is faithful today? I believe and I try to live a life where I give my everything today. And what I cannot do today, God will help me tomorrow because the sun will shine again. Do not allow your tomorrows and your next years and your next things to come in today, because you will start procrastinating and go nowhere because fear will make you stop. I am at a very ripe, well-aged person. I am 52 years old. And now people start asking me, is your pension and your plans in place? You only have 13 years left. Then you go look at things and you talk to your broker. You are never okay, according to them. Now you start thinking, what do you need to do? Where do you need to go? And for the next 13 years, I can allow myself to think I'm never going to have enough. Or I can go and look at the truth of the word that says, if your Father in heaven knows to feed the birds and give to them, how much more will He not look after you? I'd rather focus on that. I'll do my part, but I'd rather focus on that than sitting in my couch or sitting in Wimpy and telling my wife, you can't have another coffee, otherwise we're not going to live when we're 65. Don't eat that sandwich, have that sandwich. And we manifest this every day. You, Lord, make my lot secure. But we ask the questions, what if? What if I go to the doctor and this diagnosis is serious? When I prepared this, I reminded myself when I still played rugby. I had the privilege to play some provincial rugby, and I had a muscle that it wasn't torn through, but it wasn't great. And we were playing this important match, and they said to me, you cannot not play. We're going to give you an injection, and then you'll be like Superman. And it's very true. I felt like Superman to only lie for 2 weeks after that. Long story short, I go into the cloaks, and I'm one of 3 guys that get an injection. I think it was a Voltaren or something. I can't even remember. And years transgress. About 2 years after that, I'm in my final exams for my honors degree to become a pastor. I'm engaged to my wife, Sune, and I hear the news. A friend phoned me and said, do you remember that guy that played rugby with us? I said, yes, very well. He said, it's not going well with him. A few years ago, he was diagnosed with HIV and he's at the end of his lifespan. And I'm sitting there and I'm turning to my friend. I said, yes, this guy. And in a moment, I can't say it's the Lord or the devil, but I'm reminded that when we were in the cloaks, he was one of the 3 that got an injection. And in a moment, my life is over. Because if they injected him with the same needle, and within 2 minutes, I'm out of the house to my doctor for blood tests. Hey, faith. Going to be a pastor. This is where I'm at. Because I can't marry this woman. I can't make her part of my life if I'm not going anywhere. Hear what's playing in my mind. Come on, church, you know what I'm talking about. We all go through these things. And the doctor says to me, don't worry, it's actually a very timid virus. If it gets in air, it just dies. Oh, thank you. But don't worry, if there's a problem, I will call you. So I go home. 2 days later, I get home, and my mom says to me, were you at the doctor? I said, why? No, the doctor phoned. You need to go and see him. Boom! I had to phone a friend. He had to drive me. I couldn't get in my car. I couldn't talk to them because he would phone me if something was wrong. So I get the nerve. I walk in. Maura, hello. I said, the doctor wants to see me. Oh, no, we just want to give you a report. Everything's fine. If I could have sworn, if I could have burnt that place down, because my life fleeted 24 times before me. What if? And let me tell you, church, this morning, what if is most probably one of the most powerful tools in the hand of the enemy, because it brings us to a stop street where we don't go forward. What if I don't recover? What if I don't get that promotion at work? We spend emotional energy on something we cannot control. I could not control that, but it was the worst 3 days of my life. Instead of placing the energy in the right place. You see, Hebrews 11 says, faith is the confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. So faith does not mean we have all the answers, but faith means trusting the one who does. Can you and I say to God today, Lord, my life is maybe not what I envisioned, but I trust you. Things are maybe not as good as I think they should be, but I trust you. And that when we say we trust Him, that it would look and we will be happy with the outcome of it. I sometimes make a joke about this, but in the era that I grew up, if you did sport at school, in an Afrikaans school, you played rugby. You didn't do anything else. If you played cricket, it was frowned upon. Men played rugby. And if you didn't play rugby, you were on the outskirts many times. Things have changed a lot. Long story short, my eldest son comes home one day and he says, I went for the hockey trials. I said, what? Did you have to put on a skirt because girls play hockey? It was my reference. I trained them, I helped them, I promoted them, I taught them, I kicked balls with them. They were going to be magnificent rugby players. They were very good rugby players. But my eldest plays cricket today. It's a different picture than I envisioned. We have a different picture of how things would happen. You thought I was going to say different things this morning. But God knows. And we have to have the clarity of faith to say, God, I'm okay, I have faith, even if I do not see it. You see, the beauty is God is already standing in the tomorrow that frightens us. Nothing surprises Him. Nothing catches Him off guard. Nothing forces Him to change His plan. And I want to bring it back to when God the Father allowed His Son to be crucified, when He sent Him to earth. Do we think God did not know that that was the plan? Do you think it was an emergency that God sent Jesus to earth to die for us? It was the plan from the start. Because God is in our yesterday, He's now today, now tomorrow. He was there from the beginning, He's going to be there from the end. Jesus was God's plan to show His love to you and me from the start. He's in our life every day. While we are worried about tomorrow, He's already preparing grace for tomorrow. He never asks us to carry tomorrow's burdens with today's strength. He simply asks us to trust Him one day at a time. I want to invite you for a moment to just stretch your hand, your right hand, your open right hand. Just lift it up for a moment. And as you hold it up, this empty hand represents tomorrow. You and I cannot hold tomorrow. We cannot control tomorrow. But we can place our tomorrow in God's hands. And I want to ask you for a moment, as you close your hand while you hold it up, say to God, God, I cannot control my tomorrow, but I'm placing it in your hand. Will you do that now? I'm placing it in your hand, and I trust you. I trust you. And why do we trust Him? Because He lives. Do you know that song? Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know, yes I know, He holds what? My future. And life is worth the living just because He lives. Not because He adds to my life. Not because He gives me good things. Not because I have a big house and I have a lot of money. No, I have a good life. I live a fulfilled life because He lives. Because He lives. And sometimes you and I need to realize God's boundaries in our lives, in certain season of our lives, are not God trying to stop us from having fun. It's God's blessings. Listen to what Psalm 16 verse 6 says. He says, the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. And this might sound strange. I remember when Dion was 10 years old, he came to me. And while we were in Polokwane, a lot of his friends grew up on game farms. A lot of people there had farms. So they were shooting guns from when they were 6, 7. So Dion comes to me. I want to go hunt. This friend invited me. I can go and shoot a rooibok, a impala. Then I would say to him, no. Then he says, but I want to go hunt. No. I don't give him the context of why I'm saying no, but why am I saying no? Because I drove with people that told me stories of what happens in the bush. People that leave bullets in their gun and they go over a bump and they kill themselves at the back of the bakkie. So I don't want someone to teach my son the etiquette of hunting. I will teach him. And when I feel he's ready, I will allow him to go and shoot. Then he comes to me and he says, yes, but Koos shot a big impala this weekend. So then I find out. Koos shot about 14 shots on that poor impala. They shot the foot off, then they got to him and they had to cut off his throat with a non-sharp butter knife. He did not shoot him or hunt him, he murdered him. When you go hunt, there's etiquette in the bush. You don't shoot from a vehicle, you walk. Because that animal has to have. And I don't want to get into hunting now. But my son doesn't understand the context, but I understand it. And he has to have faith in me that I want the best for him. Sometimes God's no is actually a very loving yes. Because God knows and God purposes. So ladies, when you pray about that man and God says no, just stay at the no. Don't try and fix it yourself. Or when you pray about a job and you feel like this is the solution and it doesn't work out, say thank you because God has something better for you. We don't like boundaries. We want complete freedom. But God knows something we often forget. Boundaries are also protection. Parents set loving boundaries for their children because they love them. Roads have guardrails because someone cares about drivers. So I want to say again, when Psalm 17 verse 8 says, keep me as the apple of your eye and hide me in the shadow of your wings. God wrote this so that when I would have not understood my identity, you and I could reach out to this and understand we are the apple we are the apple of His eye. Think about that for a moment. Think about that for a moment. You are the most important thing, and He hides you in the shadow of His wings. This is such a beautiful image. It means to you and me, God is not distant. God shelters His people, and He protects what belongs to Him. When Dion was growing up, I think he was 10 or 11, he came to me and he said he wants these cricket gloves. And at that stage he didn't need it because the guys weren't bowling that quick. And the pair I wanted to buy him was, let's say, 200 Rand, and the pair he wanted was 500 Rand. And I said, boy, I'm just going to buy these because you don't need those yet. And he said, but what if I pay the difference? And I said, shop. Listen, those gloves never lay on the ground. They always were taken out of the box. They were made dry. He looked after them. They looked as new as the day he bought them. Why? Because He protects what He belonged to Him, what cost Him. You and I are the most expensive commodity. God gave His only Son. Jesus died on the cross because we are so important. Why will He not protect us? Why will He not protect us? Paul says, we fix our eyes on not what is seen, but what is unseen. So I want to say this morning, we do not focus on our bank balances. We do not look for advice in news headlines, medical reports, social media, politics, economics, because everything is temporary. But God calls us to focus on His eternal realities, His promises, His faithfulness, His kingdom, His presence. The situation may be temporary, but God is eternal. Pain is temporary. God is eternal. Uncertainty is temporary, but God is eternal. You see, when we change our focus, we change our perspective. And I just want to say it this morning. God wants us in our times where we feel like we are down and out to come to Him, because He wants to be our solution. And I remember a time when Marco was small. He would come in the room and he would just cry. And then I would ask him, boy, why are you crying? Then he would say, I don't know. Now I would be frustrated because if I know why, I can do something. Then I would ask him again, why are you crying? Then he would say, I don't know. And then I would say, just come and sit on my lap and cry. And then afterwards, when he now stops crying, I say, are you feeling better? Yes. Why did you cry? I don't know. Are you feeling better? Yes. I said, okay. And then as he gets off, he says, can I have a sandwich? Then I say, yes, let's go make you a sandwich. I don't know why he cries, because he's in a safe environment. But the imagery is so true for you and me. We can cry. We can go through difficult things. But the fact is we can climb on his lap and we can have a good cry. We can have a good pity party. We can tell him we feel it's unfair. We can tell him we don't feel this is right. And then he will say afterwards, do you feel better? Let me go make you a sandwich. Because that's our God. That's our God. And you received a small paper this morning. Can you take that paper out? I want to challenge you because I want to show you something. What are we? I'll ask you to write down 2 words. Are there people that can help me with pens? If you don't have a pen, you can quickly raise your hand and they'll give you a pen. I want you to write down 2 words. What, when the pressure's on, do you rely on? What do you rely on? And the second thing is, what is your biggest crisis and fear at the moment? Number 1, when the crisis hits, what do you rely on? And number 2, what is your biggest crisis at the moment? Just 2 words, one for the one and one for the other. You can keep your hands up, they will get to you with the pens. Quickly write that down for me. Quickly write that down for me. I'll repeat. The first thing that you must write down is when you're in crisis, where do you turn to for hope? Is it your bank balance, your financial security, your plans, your future? Just write that word down. And the second thing is, what crisis are you experiencing at the moment? It can be relational, it can be health-wise, it can be a variety, it can be family. Whatever that is, just write it down for a moment. And when you've done that, I want you to fold it in half and half again, that it's a small block. And when you've finished written that, I want to invite you to come and quickly throw it in this jar.